Okay, and I think we'll get started. Good afternoon and welcome to our virtual Lunch and Learn. I hope you're enjoying your lunch as we get ready to dive into our learning portion of our session. I want to thank the restaurants who worked with us today to get you fed in a timely fashion. The Barrel in Fort Erie, the Lockwood Fired Pizza in Port Colborne, Falls Manor in Niagara Falls, and the Blue Star in Welland. I also want to thank our sponsors who thought outside of the box to put a virtual spin on an already great program. They include Surf Niagara, Employment Help Center, Employment Solutions, Job Gym, Niagara College Community Employment Services, PC Works, and YMCA of Niagara. We also want to thank Brian LaChapelle and his team at B4 Networks for their technical support. They truly are the tech specialists that everyone needs, especially in these days. As we go through the presentation, feel free to submit your questions with the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. We'll get started with a quick self-introduction of each of our panelists, and then we'll take it away. So Kelly, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, perfect. Thank you, Dolores. We do appreciate being able to present about the Canada-Ontario Job Grant. Let me just take a look at everybody's lunch. Most of them look pretty healthy, so good job. Great list of restaurants within Niagara. So I appreciate the South Niagara Chamber being having us to do this lunch and learn. So basically, we are going to go through a great list of presenters, and they're all from Employment Ontario offices that are located throughout Niagara. So an Employment Ontario office, they're a nonprofit employment agency, and they work hard to work with employers like yourself, and then also job seekers on developing their skills and their abilities to be better employees. And all these services outside of first aid courses and safe food handling are mostly free of charge, and they're funded by the province of Ontario. We also administer a great program that we're going to talk about today, the Canada-Ontario Job Grant, which is funded by the province of Ontario and also the federal government of Canada. So I want to welcome everybody. Dolores already did a fantastic job of explaining who is helping to deliver these workshops. So we do have SURF, the YMCA of Niagara, Employment Help Center, Community Employment Services of Niagara College, Job Gym, which is part of John Howard Society, PC Works, which is part of Port Cares, and Employment Solutions, which is part of the Welland Heritage Council. So each presenter, as we can see the list here, where you can see their geographical area. So it's always best, if you're interested in the Canadian Ontario Job Grant, to reach out to the people in the respective areas. So we will kind of give you those details as we move along. But let's talk about our presenters today, and then we'll get into the details about the Canada-Ontario Job Grant. So we have Karen Martin from Niagara College, Laura Nadeau from the YMCA of Niagara, Ina Deerketch and myself are from Employment Solutions, Tracy Banstein and Suzanne Couture from SURF, Paula Nelson from Job Gym, Emily Schneck from PC Works, and Paul Robertson from the Employment Help Center. So what the Canadian Ontario Job Grant is all about is finding funding for training that's going to help get your team to the next level. So I know in Niagara, it's a very competitive market, and you probably always wanted to get that competitive edge through training and skill development, but never had the time or the funds to achieve that. So that's one of the things that the Canadian Ontario Job Grant is here to solve. So we're going to dive into some of the information as with questions. If we can save those to the end, that would be fantastic, because there is a lot of detail. Throughout the presentation, you're also going to see testimonials of different Niagara businesses and how they've used it, and how they've been able to access the funding, and how easy it was, and what that did to the impact of their team, current team, and also new hires. So we're going to hand things over to Paula to get things started on explaining the COJG, which is the Canada-Ontario Job Grant acronym program description. Paula?
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. The Canada-Ontario Job Grant provides direct financial support to individual employers who wish to purchase training for their workforce. Employers are able to choose the individuals they would like to have trained and the training that meets their workforce needs. This program is delivered through cost-sharing agreements between individual employers and government. So large employers who have 100 or more employees contribute half the training costs, and small employers who have less than 100 employees would contribute 1/6 of the training cost. For large employers, the government covers half the training costs up to $10,000 per trainee. And for small employers, the government employers contribute 1/6 of the training costs. In addition, small employers who are hiring and training new people are eligible to receive 100% of the funding, up to $15,000 for these new hires. The maximum support for textbooks, software, and other training materials is $500 per trainee. And the maximum allowable support for travel costs is $500 per trainee and is eligible when the training is greater than 24 kilometers each way. If the employer has travel cost policy, these travel costs will be supported according to the employer's policy, up to the maximum $500 per trainee. Employers are also responsible to cover the cost of the employer contribution and should not require their staff to cover any costs associated with the training.
So looking at one of our success stories here, can we see the new slide?
Yes, it's there.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. So the COJG in action. So this is when with the YMCA of Niagara, Safari Niagara has taken part in the Canadian Ontario Job Grant, where we found it extremely beneficial in elevating the skill set of our employees. So you'll notice as we go through some of the descriptions here that the key factor is no matter what the size of the business, you know, the Canadian Ontario Job Grant does have different funding options for multiple sizes, as Paula just went through. We're going to hand things over to Lori from the YMCA of Niagara.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. So going through this slide, the employer has to contribute, as Paula mentioned, a minimum of half the eligible training costs in cash. So basically, once we see that the training has been paid for a smaller business, which is what we mostly deal with at the YMCA, we sign a training agreement as soon as everything's accomplished and as soon as we have all the paperwork done and the application is approved. We would, once we see the training has been paid for, we would certainly cut a check for 70% of the initial training costs. And once the training has been completed, then the 30% would be paid out. The individual selected for training, the employer has to be licensed to operate in Ontario. Part of the application process is that you have to provide your CRA training or your CRA number. The employers are applying for training that is delivered in Ontario as related to employees that work in Ontario. It has to be a third-party training provider, and they must comply with all applicable federal and provincial human rights legislation. We do require as well for the employer and the trainer to provide an attestation that there is no conflict of interest. And really, it's a really simple application to fill out. I have to say, I've been at the Y for 2 years now, but I started the program with a really large service provider in Oakville, Burlington, and Mississauga. And there were it was incredible how many people would hire a grant writer to do the application for them. And I really encourage all of our employers in Niagara, call us. We're all here. We're all available to help you. We're all, very knowledgeable about the application process. And it's really, I've dealt with lots of grant funding in my past, but this is a real simple application to fill out. So if you've got any questions, just reach out to your service provider, to any one of us, and we'll help you go through the whole application process. Oh, I'm on this one too. Sorry about that, guys.
That's all right.
An employer can't be federal, provincial, municipal government agency. The employers, basically, the training participants are existing staff or replacing staff. You apply for funding for training that has already started. You can't, the training can't have already started. One of the things that I ask, or we ask at the YMCA, is that you provide us at least 30 days prior to the training being started, because there's a lot of paperwork. There's no question about it. There's a lot of paperwork on the employer's end, but then once we get all of the information in, there's a lot of paperwork on our end, because we are pretty heavily audited by our funding provider. So at least 30 days. And there's times where we can make it happen a lot faster. I find in the majority of times, I like to give the employers a timeline to say, you know, you've got 4 or 5 days to get all this back to us. And I do check in with the employer prior to the deadline to say, are you going to meet your deadline? We have a little bit of flexibility, but not much. And I find that most employers they understand deadlines and things like that, because they have that in their businesses. And again, it's just a matter of it's our workflow too, because we get so many applications in that we certainly need the time to process them.
All right. So yeah, like Lori did a great job of explaining that, you know, all these trainings, you know, there's, you know, it does take a little bit of planning to put into place, but, you know, as you understand the funding piece, that it is definitely worth it. So another successful employment story we have here is with Niagara College. So I'm going to hand things over to Karen from Niagara College to talk about this COJG in action testimonial.
Thank you, Kelly. Welcome, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here this afternoon. I'm happy to talk about this employer, which happens to be one of mine, and I have worked with them quite extensively. They've been really wonderful participants in this program and have been able to upscale or upskill many of their staff members and move them into higher paying, higher level positions. So, and as Lori mentioned, it really is a very easy to use program overall. Once the application's in, we work with you. We definitely can help you through the process of the application as well. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the program eligibility as it relates to the individuals or the staff people that are being selected for the training. So they do need to be a resident of Ontario, and either a Canadian citizen, permanent resident, or a protected person. And it is really up to the employer. So individuals themselves can't apply for this program. It's the employer who does the application, and they identify the individuals that they would like to train. There are definitely provisions for employers to hire someone who is unemployed. And in that case, we would need some sort of proof, like a conditional offer of employment, some sort of offer of employment, because the person does have to be attached to the employer. That person that's being selected for the training can't be participating in any other government funded program at the same time or any other kind of full-time training. And majority shareholders in a company are not eligible to participate in training. So that comes up occasionally. Definition of majority is 51% ownership. And next slide. And sort of the second part of this. So again, this program has been designed to be very employer driven. It was designed to meet employers' needs, because there are lots of other types of programs that meet kind of job seekers' needs. The training does have to be kind of directly related to the skill need of that employer. And the types of training that are, while many types are eligible, the types of training that are not eligible for funding through COJG is anything that the training must provide according to law. So those would be things like working at heights training, basic first aid training, those types of things. And again, business owners, including anyone with a controlling interest in a corporation, are not eligible as trainees to be funded as trainees. Senior management with large organizations, and that's defined according to the Canada Ontario Job Grant Guidelines as over 500 employees, are not eligible for funding. And senior management at small and medium employers, so that would be the 100 to 500 employee level, are still eligible for COJG funding, and just kind of defines what those positions are. Other types of training that is not eligible are executive training courses. So those would be things like MBAs, CFAs. The prep courses for things like the LSAT, GMAT, business consulting courses or business consulting services are not eligible. So it does have to be training. It cannot be consulting. And COJG cannot fund attendance at conferences. It also cannot fund things like fees or subscription fees, annual membership fees for certain types of training. Some of them do come with those kinds of things. So those are the things that would not be eligible for the program. But many, many types of training are. Around the kind of details of the training cannot be cannot exceed 1 year in duration. So it can be 1 year less a day, but it cannot exceed that 1 year period. It has to occur in Ontario or be delivered online. So we're seeing a lot of that, particularly through the pandemic. Most of the training has been taking place either with the employees working from home or perhaps on site, but with the business not being open. The types of trainers that are eligible are colleges of applied arts and technology, universities, publicly assisted Indigenous institutes, school boards, private trainers, and certainly I would say a good bulk of the training that comes to me through COJG applications would be through private trainers. Niagara actually has some really wonderful private trainers, union-based training centers, and product vendors. There are eligibility requirements if you are using a product vendor.
All right, so before we hand things over to Paul, just really quickly, if all the Employment Ontario service providers are our presenters, if you can just put your name and email in the area of the region that you serve, just so if people are interested in reaching out and have further questions, they can just pull that off the chat. So that would be helpful. So Paul, I'm going to hand things over from the Employment Help Center, and he's got one of his success stories here for a COJG in action testimonial.
Thanks, Kelly. Yeah, so I was working with a large transportation provider who was having a very difficult time hiring and recruiting new drivers. It's a common problem that we see in the transportation industry. So what we suggested for them was that they advertise that there's these positions available for AZ driver training, and that they would be eligible, the successful applicants would be eligible to have their AZ driver training, which is mandatory prior to obtaining your AZ license, paid for. So upon successful completion, the employer would hire them. And by utilizing the COJG programming, the employer was able to receive 100% funding because they were hiring new and unemployed individuals through this. So this resulted in them hiring 7 new drivers the first time that we did this. And later we did this about 9 months later, and they were able to hire 3 more. So this really helped with their recruitment efforts and to get new and to get unemployed individuals into paid positions. So it was a great experience, and we look to do it again with them in the coming months.
Yeah, and Paul, just to quickly interject, we've done a couple where they had someone that is at a DZ license, and they're like, we could really use someone AZ. We like, employee A, let's get them upgraded to the AZ. And then there was an establishment of a promotion and a pay raise, and it was just a pretty seamless process. So it doesn't have to be this grand training. It could be something as simple as a license upgrade like you just discussed.
Yeah. So I'm just going to touch on the product vendor, because each situation is a little bit unique when it comes to the product vendor training. For the purpose of the Canada Ontario Job Grant, product vendor training is defined as any application where the vendor is involved in the creation or sale of the product and is also conducting the training in how to use that particular product. A product refers to business-related materials, so technology, equipment, software, or proprietary processes, a lot of P's there, purchased by the employer. Product vendors are ineligible to deliver training on how to use the product or service. Product vendors are only eligible to deliver training that is unrelated to the use of the product or service. I'm going to give an example to that as it might demonstrate this a little easier. If so, you've approached, let's say, somebody that's not doing business very often anymore, Corel. You approach Corel and you purchase directly from Corel some new software. And Corel then says, we'd like to train your staff on using this software. That would be ineligible because they are trying to sell training. They're trying to sell a product based upon this training in order to get the funding for this training. Now, if you were to look at Corel and you were to get somebody else to do this training on the basic use, that would be acceptable. And in fact, if you were to get Corel to come back at a later date to give some more advanced training, that may be eligible at that time because it is advanced training. It's not required training in order to actually use the product or the service.
Yeah, and then just to be clear, that also, beyond computer programs, it could be new equipment for manufacturing. And if you do have that third-party trainer that is able to deliver and teach you how to use that manufacturing equipment, or your team to use it properly, or you're completely unsure, you can just give a call. So if you're in Fort Erie, just reach out to Paula and at Job Gym, and then she'd be able to guide you through it. We're going to hand things over to Tracy from Surf Niagara, which is located in Welland, but serves Francophone employment services across the region.
Welcome, everyone. So business consulting services. So business consulting services are ineligible for COJG funding. Business consulting services are defined as any situation where the proposed training would consist of a review of the business or organization rather than the development or improvement of skills for training participants. Example, if the proposed training consists of increasing an employer's productivity and making their operations more efficient, this training would be considered business consulting and be ineligible for COJG. So another successful story that we have here is from the Niagara Furniture Bank. We were directed to Canadian Ontario job grants through our contact with YMCA Employment Services. The Niagara Furniture Bank wants to support its employees as much as it does its community. We want to empower staff to reach higher standards and become better trained within the workforce. Working with Lori offered direction to our organization on achieving higher accreditations for our staff. She explained the process and cared about making sure we were set to go. She was prompt and helpful with understanding the forms. She was informative and followed up to make sure we were moving in the right direction. And again, that was from Niagara Furniture Bank.
Thanks, Tracy. The key factors, you're starting to see some of these testimonials, for-profit, non-profit, big, small. So really, start to, get your mind thinking around some different trainings that your business can offer, because COJG can kind of adapt to many different types of businesses. We're going to hand things over to Ina from the Employment Solutions in Welland.
Thank you, and good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us today. COJG has been around for a number of years, and quite a few employers had an opportunity to use this program and upskill their employees and workforce. And we're happy to be able to deliver this session today to allow more employers to become aware of this amazing opportunity. And as with any grants or any programs, there are some regulations and requirements, and the attestation process is one of the requirements for this program. Although employers are able to choose any private or public colleges or universities, employers also are able to hire a private trainer to deliver the curriculum and deliver the program or training. So in case of when employers select a private trainer, employer must attest to trainer's eligibility, that there is no conflict of interest between employer and training provider, select training, attest to the fact that select training is not product vendor training, attest to selected training is not part of the business consulting, and attest to the fact that they received and understand the COJG employer and training provider information sheet. We as service providers will be, after reviewing and approving application, will be sending all that information to employer to review and complete that attestation process. And within that attestation process, training provider must attest to meeting educational and experience requirements, length of time providing training, that there is no conflict of interest between employer and training provider, not being an ineligible product vendor, and not offering business consulting as part of training. And again, the training provider will receive the COJG employer and training provider information sheet to become aware of all the circumstances or details of the program. So conflict of, I would like to touch base more on conflict of interest. All parties involved in this funding must disclose any actual or potential conflict of interest that could be any person that has capacity to influence the employer's or training provider's decision, or has a relationship or financial interest that could interfere with the program objectives. So it's really, the training has to be focusing on the upskilling existed employees or incumbent employees or new hires. Next slide, please. All right, employer financial contribution. Again, there is a great support, financial support for employer to take part into this grant. And I believe Karen already touched on that. But again, if we're talking about the larger employer who are 100 or more employees, the employer is expected to cover 50% minimum of the training. And the small employers that are fewer than 100 employees, the minimum cover is going to be 1/6 of the training cost for incumbent employees. If those employees are new hires, then the coverage from the government will be up to 100%, up to 15,000 per new hire. And again, quite a few employers have been using this grant for many years now, and Brand Boulevard is one of them. And they took part in COJG using services from YMCA. They are happy to attest that it allowed them to access training that was probably too expensive for their budget. And also they really appreciated, or they appreciate the service that YMCA was able to provide, as the process was easy, and YMCA team, COJG team members were very knowledgeable and make this process very easy and user-friendly. Yeah, I want on the attestate more on the employer feedback. Brian, the very one IT support that we have right now, he chatted as well that their team used COJG for upskilling their employees, and he really he found that process, or the COJG application and training process, very supportive and very Sorry, I'm just trying to find, to read exactly what Brian said, but anyway, so he appreciated the program. Sorry, it's too many messages in the chat box now. All right.
All right, and then really quickly before we hand things off to Emily from PC Works, is that when you're looking at the new hire, so you're a smaller business and you want to get that 100% coverage, the start of the training and the hiring have to be coincide. You can't just start someone, oh, they started a month ago and that kind of stuff. So, if there is some clarification that you need on that, once again, reach out to your respective person. So we're going to hand things over to Emily from PC Works, located in Port Colborne.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. We have another success story here, and this one's from Go Green Plumbing. And they said, as a small business, it is always difficult to take the leap to add another full-time staff member. Wondering if the workload and finances are there in order to keep someone employed is always one of the main questions when hiring. The training grants provided have been a great incentive to help me go forward with the decision to hire another staff member. So the COJG applications are sorted into tiers to ensure that funded applications are in line with ministry's strategic priorities. Tier 1 is defined as any training which will result in a new or better job, and this includes retaining employees who have received a formal notice of layoff, and is the first approved application for this employer in the last 6 months. Tier 2 is defined as any training that will lead to a new or better job, but the employer has had an approved COJG application in the past 6 months, or the incumbent employee will not receive an increase in wage or change in position. Tier 2 applications will only be funded if there is funding remaining after Tier 1 applications are funded. Tier 3 is defined as an application that supports incumbent employees with the training cost per trainee below $500 and under 1 week in duration, or the employee is required to have the training due to legislation, regulation, or policy. For applicants in Tier 3, consideration will only be given if there are no pending applications in Tier 1 and 2, and there's availability of COJG budget.
So a good thing to think about that is that, especially you want to be in Tier 1, most definitely, and Emily did a great job explaining that. It's just the key factor is it going to give somebody a raise, a promotion? Those are kind of the main questions you want to answer if you want to get into a Tier 1 application. So that's a good starting point. We're going to hand things over to Suzanne from the employment. Oh, sorry, Emily, this is still yours. I apologize.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So another success story here, and this one's from North American Traffic. Training 3 of our employees in management development has allowed our company to reduce costs and increase revenues. Without the financial assistance of the Canada-Ontario Job Grant Program, this type of training would have been out of reach for us. Hiring new technical staff with the help of Niagara College's hiring incentive programs has allowed us to bolster our product development team, which in turn enables us to be more competitive in a rapidly changing market.
All right, we're going to hand things over to now Suzanne from Surf Niagara.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm happy to be here. I'm not sure if, are you able to hear me clearly this time, Kelly, or is it still?
Yeah, you still have the feedback, but your voice is coming through, yeah.
Okay, great. All right, so the next steps for the employer, so it's really just summing some of the things up that everybody has already mentioned. So the employers will need to ensure that all the forms are filled out correctly. So this includes submitting to the appropriate office, so your employer application form. You will have your employer attestation form that was already mentioned, training provider attestation form, participant registration forms, employer registration form if for a consortia application, electronic funds transfer form for over 25 consortia applications. So all those forms need to be correctly filled out. The employers are responsible to pay the training provider in full at the beginning of the training, and will be reimbursed by the service provider or / ministry. After the employer receives 70% reimbursement of funding upon presentation of proof of payment. to the training provider. So you have to show proof before being able to get that 70% reimbursement. And then once the training is complete and there's a training outcome report that is submitted, then you will receive the remainder 30% at the end of the training once it's complete. That's it.
All right, perfect. Thank you. So one more success story. This is from Employment Solutions. So in our office here, the team at Employment Solutions was instrumental in helping our organization receive COJG funding to help train new staff members with industry-specific training that is unique to our facility. With their help, we were able to apply for funding and have staff we need to grow our business. Employment Solution team members made the process easy to manage and provided invaluable support along the way. So that's Movement Unlimited. So they are located in Pelham, just next to Massimo's on Highway 20. So free, I guess a free plug for Massimo's. I'll charge them later. But ultimately, we're going to open the floor to questions. So I'm just going to double check the chat and the screen here. So Brian, I don't see any, maybe you have a different viewpoint than I, if there's any questions coming in.
There are no questions at this time.
What a robust presentation. So what we will do while we're waiting for some questions that come in. So Dolores, we will send this presentation to everybody, and I will update it with everyone's region and then their email address. So if they want to reach out to, say, Karen, if they're located in say Catherine's or what have you, and so on. So I think that's the best way to go. So I appreciate all the presenters. So we have a great Employment Ontario team here in Niagara that work collaboratively to accomplish COJG goals. And so some people are asking for the slide deck. So we will be sending that out to Dolores once we update the email addresses. And but yeah, we have a great COJG team here in Niagara where we kind of share resources, especially when it gets down to the budget year, where someone will reach out to Tracy at SURF and say, okay, well, that might be a little bit too much for our budget, but I know that Lori at the YMCA or Paula from Job Gym can help you out. So there is always that network and support. So just it's wonderful additions. So Tracy, do you have something to add?
I do. I just wanted to add that although Surf Niagara is a French employment center, we also offer our services in English as well, in both French and English. So
perfect.
I have a question.
Sure.
First of all, just to let everybody know, we are recording the session, and you will be able to watch it again and again and again on our website. So feel free. My question, I'm just thinking about our own operation. And Kelly and Paula, as you know, when we're looking and recruiting for new staff, one of the things that we're always looking for is some training and experience with Quickbooks. And in speaking to members, a lot of our businesses, smaller businesses, are looking for the same kind of training. So just to put it into perspective, if I have an employee that requires some QuickBook training, and I can find, I guess, a third-party training partner that could qualify for this type of fund?
All right, so Lori, she's going to be our first question, but Dolores, it did seem like you were paying attention to the whole presentation, the way you're using some of those words. So congratulations and good job. Lori, if you want to answer this question, that'd be great.
Sure, that would absolutely be eligible. We do, we fund all kinds of training, soft skills, hard skill training, a lot of leadership. There seems to be lately a lot of leadership. We've done a lot in the last year with some of our other service providers in the area for PSW training, but definitely QuickBooks would be eligible for funding.
And then I guess a quick question to Karen at Niagara College, and I don't know if you have the answer to this, but is Niagara College still providing the continuing education programs at night where people can go and take some specific programs?
Yes, Dolores. So although part-time studies is kind of operating differently than it used to, for sure there are still part-time courses available. Many of the various programs might operate on a part-time basis, and many of those would be eligible for funding because the college would be kind of an already approved training provider. So even something like Quickbooks could be done theoretically through the college, or it could be done through a private trainer. And there's really no bias on our part in terms of, like, if you apply for COJG through me, there's no bias that the training has to be through the college, right? It can still be training anywhere. But yes, there are still many part-time courses still being offered at the college.
Okay, here's another one for you guys. If I had a couple of my members who we all required the same type of training for our staff, and we found someone, a third party, who could provide that training, it's always nice when you can learn with colleagues, right? Even if you don't work in the same place, but just with other people. I think that's always a good way to learn. Can we individually apply for the training grant and have the one trainer train all of our folks at the same time in a scheduled format? Could that work?
So Karen?
Just unmuting here. Yes, I would say in general that absolutely could work. The employers could apply individually, and I have funded similar training in the past that's like that. That might be, say, a financial institution and in this case, it was someone in the hospitality industry, and they kind of combined forces. They alternated training at different locations, but they each applied separately. But it did help reduce the cost overall because they were sharing. So that would be one way of doing it. The second would be to actually apply potentially as a consortia, right? And to have, a group of employers who would come together, decide on the type of training that they wanted, and then could apply as a consortia to the program.
Oh, okay. There's possibility there.
Paul, you look like you wanted to add something.
Yeah, I was just in that consortia application as well, for the organization that kind of takes the lead on that, there are some administrative costs that could be recouped through the grant as well.
Yes.
Okay, so in other words, if we had a number of our members who required, let's just go with QuickBooks, because I know that's one that a lot are always looking for. And, we took the lead as the chamber and coordinated something and submitted the application. We could potentially coordinate something like that for the group. Okay, I've learned so much.
Yeah, and with I just want to say the word because it sounds awesome, consortia, that, you do have some extra admin funding for the organization that is doing the lead as well. So if the chamber was doing the lead, let's say in Pelham, there could be some extra, because gathering all the participants and all those different fees, those requirements does take time, right? So there is it does get a little bit administrative heavy. So there is some relief there, administrative wise. And I think that the Employment Ontario COJG group, we call it a group, but we should be the COJG Consortia. I think I'm going to put that application in for our new name. Yeah.
That's good. Do we have any other questions? I do want to give a shout out to all of you, because through my many years with the chamber, I have had the opportunity to work with most of your organizations, and all of our hiring needs have pretty much been assisted through the efforts of one of the groups on the screen right now. And I can tell you, without your help, that hiring process would have been so much more difficult. You've in the past screened candidates for us, found candidates for us, given us space to conduct the interviews, answered so many of, sometimes I have crazy questions, and you've done your best to answer those, but you're all so great to work with, and you're really there to make our lives a little easier when it comes to recruiting staff and accessing funding and different grants to really help our labor needs. So thank you to each and every one of you and your organizations for being there for many of you for decades. Your organizations are as old as I am.
Yeah.
Saying something.
All right, perfect. Yeah, and then also, yeah, beyond the COJ, everyone here at the in the different Employment Ontario offices, they can help you with the hiring, like you've mentioned, like we've done with the different South Niagara chambers. Is that, you know, if you're a small business, don't go in the world of Indeed. It's a scary place. We'll help kind of filter you through and save you some time. And our services are free, so don't try to bang your head against the wall and just call an Employment Ontario office instead. So I appreciate the invite, and I thank everybody here as well. So once again, I'll resend the application with everyone's contact and also with the link to do a COJ application as well. So that's kind of a real important first step too, to kind of get to know that a little bit better. So anything else from the panel from Employment Ontario here? Our newly named COJ Consortium? Or
If I can add something, again, when employer goes online and open that application, it might be a bit intimidating because there are several steps there that if you don't complete the application on a regular basis, you might have you might have some concerns. So reach out to us. We'll be able to, or any service provider that is in your area, and we are allowed to work with employers within 35 give or take kilometers within our radius. So we all are very happy to assist you with an actual application, as well as reviewing and approving application afterwards. Thank you.
Thanks, Ina. That was great.
Anyone else? No? Okay. Well, I want to thank all of our panelists for a very informative presentation. We encourage all of the listeners and all of our members to take advantage of all of the programs and services that are out there to make your lives a little easier. I also want to remind everyone that tomorrow is our final podcast of this season. Interestingly enough, we'll be discussing the local labor market. Our guests will include Mr. Kelly Jones from Employment Solutions, Deanna D'Elia from the YMCA, and Vivian Kennard from Niagara Workforce Training Board. You can listen live tomorrow at 9:30, or you can catch us at your convenience on Spotify, iTunes, Google, or Stitcher. Thanks again for joining us. I hope you enjoyed your lunch. Have a wonderful day. Take care, everyone.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, everyone.